I don't know if what I did counts as revenge. Maybe it was just survival, self-respect even. But 7 years ago, I walked away from my entire family. And now, after everything, after they ignored me, belittled me, told me I was too much, too sensitive, too weird, now they want me back. Growing up, I always knew I was different. I wasn't loud. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't into sports or parties or whatever it was that made you normal in my family. I was quiet. I liked drawing, reading, building imaginary cities out of cardboard and glue. My room was filled with fantasy books and notebooks full of made-up worlds. While my siblings wrestled in the backyard or watched football with Dad, I was in my room painting dragons. My parents didn't exactly hate that about me. They just didn't understand it. Don't you want to go outside? Why don't you hang out with real kids? All this fantasy stuff, it's not very healthy, you know? It wasn't bullying, not exactly, but it chipped away at me. Every family dinner felt like a reminder that I was the outlier. They'd interrupt me, talk over me, make jokes about my latest phase. One time at Thanksgiving, I tried to explain that I was illustrating my first children's book. My uncle asked if I was still unemployed but good at coloring. Everyone laughed. I did too. That fake, tight-lipped kind of laugh you learn when you're the joke, and you don't want to cause a scene. I wish I could say there was one big, dramatic moment that made me leave. But it wasn't a slap or a screaming match. It was a slow erosion, 1,000 little moments that built up until I just couldn't anymore. But I do remember the last straw. Christmas Eve 2016, I was 24, living alone in a tiny studio apartment, broke but proud. I had finally finished illustrating my first real book. It was being printed. I had an ISBN number and everything. I brought handmade ornaments to decorate the family tree. I'd painted them myself, tiny scenes of family, memories. One had our old dog, Max. Another was a cartoon version of my parents dancing in the kitchen. It took me days to finish them. When I opened the box, my sister barely looked before saying, "Can we not do the creepy craft stuff this year?" My aunt laughed. My dad didn't even glance up. My mom sighed and said, "Maybe just keep them in the box, okay? Let's not make things too busy." I nodded, took the box back to the car, told myself it didn't matter. But later, while I was in the kitchen, helping stir gravy, I overheard my cousin say, "He always does this. Has to make everything about him. He can't just be normal for once." And my mom replied, "I know. I really hoped he'd grow out of this phase by now." A phase. I was 24, not 14. I wasn't pretending to be an elf or wearing a cape to dinner. I was a working artist with a book coming out. And yet, still the weird one. That night, at dinner, nobody asked me about the book. Nobody asked about my life. But my brother, who had just gotten promoted at the car rental place, got a standing toast. Look, I'm happy for him. I am. But there was a part of me that was just screaming, "See me, please, just once." And then came the moment that broke it. My aunt, wine in hand, said, half laughing, "You know, maybe you should skip next year. Give us all a break." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I stood up, put my napkin down, and said, "Okay, that's it." Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked what I meant. Nobody followed me. Outside, I drove home in silence. Not even music. I got home, sat in the dark, and waited to feel something. Hurt, rage, relief. I felt empty. The next morning, I deleted the family group chat, turned off notifications. I didn't make a statement. I didn't block anyone. I just stopped showing up. I thought someone might call. They didn't. Not at first. I missed birthdays. Nobody noticed. I didn't send a Christmas card the next year. Got no message. But something strange happened in that silence. I grew. I stopped apologizing for who I was. I made new friends, ones who didn't mock my art, who came to my tiny signings, who read my stories and sent me memes about dragons and robots and messy little humans who didn't fit in. I published another book, then another. One of them, a quiet little story about a lonely robot who builds his own family out of found objects, went viral. I was invited to speak at conferences, schools, podcasts. I gave a TEDx talk. I got an agent. I bought myself a real desk. I was okay. For the first time, I felt seen. Not by them, but by people who mattered. And for a while, that was enough. Until they found me again. The first message came on a Tuesday. I remember because it popped up while I was eating lunch alone in a bookstore cafe, the kind of place with too many plants and not enough outlets. It was from my sister. Hey, hope you're good. Mom says she hasn't heard from you in a while. We were just talking about you. I stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't answer. It felt weird. Not painful, just jarring. Like someone tapping your shoulder years after you stopped turning around. Over the next few months, more messages followed. My cousin sent me a blurry picture of an old sketch I made when I was 13. Found this cleaning out Grandma's attic. You were always talented, LOL. My brother messaged me a single, hey. My aunt mailed me a birthday card with no return address and no note inside. Just a $25 Starbucks gift card and the words, thinking of you. The thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. That's what made it so confusing. If they'd messaged me the year after I left, I probably would have cried or snapped or said something sharp I'd regret later. But by now, I'd built something whole on my own. I didn't need them. But part of me still wanted something. I don't know. Acknowledgement? Closure? An apology that never quite came? Then came the message from my mom. Not a long one. No, I'm sorry or I miss you. Just a link to a Facebook post. Someone had shared one of my newer illustrations. A forest scene with a little boy and a mechanical bird. It had thousands of shares. Her message said only, I saw this today. I thought it was beautiful. I stared at the screen for a long time. I almost replied, thanks. That's mine. Took you long enough. But instead, I just archived the chat. That felt like the right distance. I went back to my life, to the deadlines, the school visits, the emails from kids who told me my books made them feel seen. I tried not to think about it too much. Then, about a year later, a video of me went viral. I had done this talk at a book festival. Casual, unscripted, just me rambling about how being the weird kid turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Someone clipped the part where I said, you don't have to keep proving your worth to people who already decided not to see you. It hit a nerve. Within days, I had offers. A film. Studio wanted to option my robot story. A toy company wanted to license my characters. One teacher wrote me to say her students reenacted one of my books on stage and cried. That was the week the voicemail came. From my mom. Her voice sounded tired, older. She said she'd seen the video, that she didn't realize, not really, how much I had carried, that she missed me, that Grandma missed me, that the family talked about me more than I'd think, that they wanted me home for Christmas, that they wanted me back. I listened to it twice, then again. I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it also wasn't nothing. I told my best friend. She didn't say go or don't go. She just asked, would you feel good walking into that house? Or would you just be walking into a performance of who they think you are now? That question haunted me. Because it's true. They weren't reaching out because I changed. They were reaching out because now I was admirable. Now I had something they could brag about. The weird kid? He's successful now. The family disappointment? He's doing TEDx talks and donating books to schools. Now I was shiny. Now I fit the narrative. But what about back then? When I was 14 and drawing aliens instead of playing soccer? When I made handmade birthday cards and they laughed? When I got my first art rejection letter and cried in the kitchen? And my mom told me maybe it was time to be realistic? Where were they then? Where was this warmth when I was quietly falling apart in my own house? That's the thing about absence. You get used to it. You build routines without them. You stop reaching for the phone. You stop hoping they'll see you. And then, just when the scar starts to fade, they knock. Not because they've changed, but because the world changed how it sees you. And now they want to be part of the picture. I didn't know if I wanted that. I didn't know if I wanted them. I didn't say yes right away. I let the Invitations sit in my inbox like a pebble in my shoe. Small, but impossible to ignore. We'd love to see you this year, just for a bit. You don't have to stay the whole time. It was polite, careful, worded like they were tiptoeing around a sleeping animal. I stared at it every night for a week. I told myself it wasn't a trap, that they meant well, that maybe they were different now. But part of me couldn't help but hear my cousin's voice from years ago. He always has to make everything about himself. And my mom's response, I wish he'd grow out of this weird phase already. Could people like that really change? Or did they just get better at pretending once the cameras showed up? Still, I said yes. Not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to see it for myself. I told them I'd come for an hour. No promises. My mom replied, That's more than we deserve. Thank you. I didn't bring gifts. I didn't wear anything fancy. I didn't rehearse any grand speeches in the mirror. I just showed up. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same. The same plastic reindeer on the lawn. The same too bright porch light. The same wreath with one bulb always missing. For a second, I thought maybe the past 7 years hadn't happened. Like I'd blink and find my younger self still standing on that porch with a box of hand-painted ornaments, hoping this year would be different. But I wasn't that person anymore. I rang the bell. My sister answered the door like she'd been practicing how to look surprised. Oh my God, yes, you're here. She hugged me. Too long. My mom followed behind, eyes glassy. You look healthy, she said. I didn't know what that meant. I said thanks anyway. The house was full. Cousins, uncles, people I used to know so well and now couldn't make small talk with without feeling like I was borrowing someone else's personality. They weren't hostile, just overly careful. Everything I said was met with enthusiastic agreement, even when I said I hated peppermint bark. My grandma cried when she saw me, told me I looked like my grandfather, gave me a peppermint she pulled from a pocket and said, I kept one just in case you came. My cousin, the one who used to mock everything I wore, brought out one of my books and asked for an autograph. I signed it. Someone hung one of the ornaments I made all those years ago. That one hit a little harder than I expected. Then came the part I knew was coming, the apologies, soft, vague ones. We didn't realize. We thought we were joking. You've always been special, my sister even said. We were just scared. You felt like a mirror, and none of us liked what we saw. I didn't know how to respond to that. I appreciated the words, sure, but they didn't undo the silence I lived in for so long. When I got up to leave, my mom followed me to the door. Thank you for coming, she said. She looked older, more fragile. I used to think you were difficult, she continued. Now I think maybe I was lazy. You were different, and I didn't make the effort. And I'm sorry. That was the closest I'd ever get to what I wanted. I nodded. She asked if I'd come again next year. I told her I'd think about it. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt quiet, like someone had just closed a book I thought would never end. The truth is, I don't hate them. I just don't need them. I built something without their validation, without their applause. I found people who saw me when I wasn't shining, who laughed at my bad jokes, celebrated my messy wins, and hung every ornament I ever made like it was priceless. And now, when I sit at a table, I don't wonder if I belong. I built the table. And there's room for every weird, soft, strange-hearted person who never quite fit. So no, I don't regret leaving. I regret staying as long as I did. But now? Now I live loud. I live weird. And I live loved, exactly as I am.